So this is a continuation of the Wenham Select Board meeting on June 8th, 2021. We have had an executive session and a recess, and we're back now for open session. Where I proposed a couple of changes to our process for this next couple of weeks, just to try something out. The board has seen it, hopefully, and I'll just briefly explain it for the people who might be watching. Really, all I'm trying to do here is to make our meetings a little bit more efficient and to try to avoid talking over each other, especially in the routine things. So basically, the looking at the agenda, it pretty much stays the same in the exact same format as it is through announcements and reports and consent agenda. The consent agenda will be handled by our clerk. So Diane will make the motion and call for the vote on the consent agenda. And the change comes in the new business and old business, which folks will notice. We've always had one of our initials after that, and at least I have found it a little bit confusing because I'm never really sure what to say if my initial is next to something, and we tend to just bounce it back to the TA. So I'm going to recommend that we try for a couple of weeks anyway, that when we get to each agenda item, I will literally just read the agenda item and probably pass it directly to Tom, who will then either give a brief explanation or turn it over to a staff member who has more detail on that. We'll have our usual discussion first, and then when we're ready for a motion, we'll ask Gary to make all the motions so that one person will know that they're the person to make the motions, and we won't be wondering, is it me, is it him? The clerk, Diane, will second all of the motions, and I will call the vote. In this case, it'll be a roll call vote. Everyone, the other participation is all the same. If someone is uncomfortable, if Gary's uncomfortable or feels like he has a conflict making a motion, this is pretty flexible. And my recommendation or my suggestion is that we just try this for a couple of meetings to see how it works. And so the next 2 meetings, and then the meeting after that, we'll take a minute to reevaluate and see if we like it, don't like it, or if there's anything that we want to change about it. This is actually the process that we used many, many years ago when I was on the school committee. It was a larger board, but it seemed to work. So if no one has any major objections, we'll proceed today with that process. I'll try to keep up with that process. Okay, that being said, we will move on to public input, which is usually the first thing on our agenda. If anyone has anything they'd like to say from the audience, audience sounds funny, please put your name in the chat. We will give you a couple of seconds to do that. And if we don't see anyone who wishes to be recognized, we'll just move on to the first agenda item. I guess I should, Jackie, there's no one in the chat?
No one in the chat tonight.
Okay. I guess we've given folks enough time. We'll move on then to our announcements. And as always, or as is our recent custom, Tom, will you share the announcements with us, please?
Thank you. First announcement, if you're looking out your window tonight, it does look like there may be some serious rain for the next few hours. And if you had purchased a rain barrel previously, you would have been making money tonight. But we still have them available for sale. Our Wenham residents receive a half-price discount. Our community, through the Great American Rain Barrel, is excited to offer 100 barrels, first come, first served, to residents at a half price of $34.50 per barrel, which is 70% off retail. You only have a couple more days to order them. Our residents have to order them by June 10th at greatamericanrainbarrel.com/community/. You may pick them up on Saturday, June 19th from 8 until noon at a DPW garage on 95 Grapevine Road. If you have any questions, please contact our water department at 978-468-5520, extension 6. We are still accepting applicants for our board and committee openings. You may submit your interest in serving through our appointments request Google form found at wenham.gov/volunteer by sending an email to the attention of the select board at admin@wenhamma.gov. The boards and committees that we have availabilities on are the Affordable Housing Trust, an audit committee, both have 3 openings. Board of Registrars has 1 opening for a 3-year term. The Cemetery Commission, the Community Preservation Committee, both have an opening for a 3-year term. The Conservation Commission has 3 openings for a 3-year term. The Council on Aging Board has 4 openings for 3-year terms. In new addition, our Finance Advisory Committee has a June 11th deadline for 2 openings for a 3-year term. The Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media Board has 2 openings for a 3-year term. The Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council has 1 opening for a 3-year term. Our Historic District Commission has 3 openings for a 3-year term. The Iron Rail Commission has 1 opening for a 2-year term. Our Open Space and Recreation Committee has all their openings, so 7 openings for a 1-year term. The Veterans Committee has 4 openings, 1 for a 1-year term and 3 for a 3-year term. The Wenham Human Rights Committee currently has 1 opening for a 3-year term. The Wish Committee has 3 openings, 1 for a 1-year term and 2 for 3 years. And the Zoning Board of Appeal has 1 opening for a 3-year term. That would be for a full membership, and 3 associate member openings for staggered terms. Your letters of interest can still be sent. Remember, the Finance Committee interest deadline is June 11th, though. For Saturday, June 19th at 10 a.m., we are announcing a Juneteenth flag raising ceremony. It will be in front of Town Hall, and you can check out wenhamma.gov for more information. And we are also recognizing graduating seniors and congratulating class of 2021. I had the pleasure of attending the graduation last Saturday morning. Though it was very warm out there, the ceremony went off without a hitch, and we want to thank all our graduating seniors. Catherine, do you want me to read the names of all the seniors?
I think it's okay if we just see them here. There's a pretty good batch. Looks like some siblings.
Absolutely.
So we do congratulate all of those folks who just graduated last Saturday.
Yeah, it was a wonderful ceremony, and I want to thank all the students who graduated, their friends and relatives that appeared, and all the representatives from Wenham who appeared at the graduation. Thank you very much. And now I believe there is a recognition of Reverend Michael Duda from the First Church in Wenham. I believe someone will be reading that.
Yeah, I think Chief Kavanaugh is on and maybe could say a few words. Reverend Duda is the chaplain of the fire department. So we just wanted to recognize him for his, because he's retiring.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. Reverend Duda, he was with us for over 10 years as our chaplain. He, through thick and thin, he was always there for us. It didn't matter what it was, a death, anything, he would be there with us. Memorial Day, he always said a prayer. He always liked to march with us. The 9/11 remembrance, I'm going to try and get him back for 9/11 this year because it's the 20th anniversary. And I'd really like to have him there for that. But we had a little ceremony for him here at the station with all the firefighters where we presented him his helmet, which means a lot to us and to him. And with that, you can't find a better man than Michael.
Thanks. We have some great pictures here that show Mike Duda in his various different functions, from the casual stand up on the stage and probably provide some kind of a benediction to dressing up for our 375th in the middle with our select person, Bucco there, and Buffy Colt. And then it's sort of more formal, I'm in my tie or in my jacket, Memorial Day. And he's been Reverend Duda has been a wonderful speaker, but he's been a wonderful neighbor. He's offered his church and his folks and his hall to so many times. I don't know how many times we had Memorial Day and it was raining and we couldn't stand outside, or Veterans Day, and we'd just go into the church hall. So we'll miss him, I think, a lot, and we wish him well in his retirement. Is there anything else anyone would like to say? Okay, so good luck, Reverend Duda. I'm sure he has many things planned for his retirement. Don't think he's going to be sitting around. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our reports as we always do, and we'll begin with the town administrator's report, please.
Thank you very much. A few updates. First is we are awaiting first payment of the American Rescue Plan Act, which would be coming our way probably in a couple of weeks, of approximately $544,000 to pay for various activities related to COVID. There being some COVID funding, some of it can be utilized to cover losses that the town may have received in revenue based on COVID, and also some infrastructure, primarily water uses. So once the funding comes in, we'll be working with our department heads for distribution of that and how we may be expending it. That $544,000 is over a 2-year period. So we'll receive one check this year for 544, and then next fiscal year, another check for 544. Back on the local scene, the Massachusetts State Senate approved the FY22 budget. We're just waiting for a final budget to go to the conference committee where there may be differences, and then to the governor. Right now, there was really no changes in the Senate budget that really made an effect negatively or positively on the town from the previous budget. So we're in good shape. We budgeted conservatively regarding local aid this year. So we should have some additional funds available going forth next year toward free cash. Next is a proposal that I'll be putting on formally on your agenda for your next 2 meetings for a first reading and a final vote. I was in discussions with town council KP Law about let's look at a retainer proposal versus the hourly proposal that we generally have for the community. They got us the proposal this week. There was some questions that we had on it, and it was to be included within the retainer, which looks like we could be saving between $30,000 and $40,000 a year in the legal budget. When we say a retainer covers all your expenses. Basically, if you use very little or use it to the extreme, it generally covers you there. So if we're calling for opinions, requests, town meeting coverages, all that, it's all covered in the one package. And based on what our previous FY expenses were running, about budgeting around 80 or 85,000, I believe this was 42,000. So they've answered all our questions. I'll make a presentation at our next board meeting. And then the way our board likes to do is have a first reading and then go to the next meeting for the final vote for you to think it over and ask any other questions. But it will be on your agenda for your next meeting. And I will be forwarding that to you also. Information for our public, town clerk is working with our team to get the street listing book out. I know a lot of individuals like the street listing books in town, so just want to thank our town clerk, Trudy, for working on it. Personnel items. Our police department is working on posting the administrative assistant position. And that will be posted probably within the next few days for that. So if individuals are interested in it, or please contact the police department. We'll have all the information up on the website for you also. Next, and I suggest to my successor, Ryan Ferrara, to participate in our North Shore Coalition meetings. My final one probably here will be on June 29th, 2021. Those are remote participation, generally Zoom meetings. And those are meetings with the administrators and the mayors of the North Shore for various issues and working with MAPC. Highly well worth it, and I hope that Ryan participates. I'm sure he will in them beginning during the summer, but I will attend the last one in June. Last one, and this is all 351 cities and towns are looking for some final guidance on this, and that is regarding Zoom meetings going forward. As you know, the governor will be lifting the state of emergency on June 15th. That also means it lifts the ability for cities and towns to participate in Zoom meetings because this was a temporary provision to work with the open meeting law. The governor had filed legislation about a week and a half ago to allow a temporary extension so the legislature and communities can work on a possible permanent resolution. As of yesterday, the bill has not cleared the Senate Ways and Means Committee. It may have yesterday, but I could not find that it had actually done so. The Senate did have a session yesterday, so I could not find that it came out. The House only has 2 sessions scheduled before June 15th, and that is Wednesday and Thursday. So if there is an action to happen, it should happen in the next 48 hours. Unless something comes up that I'm not aware of, if we do not have a signed bill, signed act by June 15th, we need to go back to public open session meetings. Some towns have done it, started it already. I have noticed on our calendar that we have nothing beyond June 15th on our board. But when our departments and committees had asked me, I've advised them right now to, if you have to file or post a meeting, post it as an open meeting, and then we will work on that determination when we get closer. I'm expecting the House to act on this in the next 2 days because there are too many communities that still utilize Zoom. We've used it very successfully here. Someday I'll learn how to use it well, but it's been very successful for boards and committees and for all the participants. I know we're up to 15 right now who are watching this and interacting with us. So I will keep our board and our committees well aware of what's happening over that in the next few days. And that's what I have for now. Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Tom. Our public health nurse has been very kind to continue to give us updates on COVID-19, and she's here again this evening. Welcome, Mary Beth. If you have an update for us, we would be happy to hear it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So what you can see before you is the data week by week of what's been happening with cases in Wenham. And it's really very exciting. As you can see, the last 3 weeks, we've had 0 new cases. The last new case was way back in the 10th of May. So in terms of action of COVID, we're doing very, very well. So this is wonderful news. We stand at the same total case count of 294 confirmed cases and 29 probable cases. Jackie, were you able to get the vaccination slide? There we go. Okay, so this is this is where our focus needs to be at this point. Now, that's a very busy slide. I'm sorry. This is coming from the state weekly vaccination report. So this is just looking at the town of Wenham. And on the left, it's showing you the age group and then the number of residents who fit into that population category, and then what the percentage of that age grouping is of the town's total population. And then the lighter blue is how many people have had at least one dose. The medium blue is the fully vaccinated individuals. So as you can see, right now, the 12 to 15 and 12 to 15 particularly have just recently been eligible to get vaccine over the last 4 weeks. So hopefully that number is going to rise over time. And, long term, the hope is that eventually we see, from 0 to 12 in there as well to be captured. What I've highlighted for you in yellow is the places where we need to do the most work. So we still have a lot of work to do in 16 to 19. I didn't highlight those because those are, newer categories. But our 20 to 29-year-olds, we do not have a high percentage of people who are either partially or fully vaccinated at this point. And, for individuals who are not vaccinated, they are at risk of contracting COVID and are at risk of transmitting infection to other people, particularly vulnerable people. So we've done quite well with our hats off to our 30 to 40-year-olds. They've done a great job. And next behind them, the 50 to 64-year-olds. We have a little bit more growth we could do with our seniors, our 65 plus population. We've done extensive outreach. So I think that's, in my opinion at this point, those are people who have not yet availed themselves, and everybody has the right to choose whether or not they're going to avail themselves of this important protective measure. So that's where we stand right now. That data is of the date of 6/1. So that will continue to be shared out by the state on a weekly basis. As Tom said, the state of emergency will elapse on the 15th of this month. I will say on another important public health note, just listening to Dr. Catherine Brown from the state today, she's our state epidemiologist. EEE, as Eastern Equine Encephalitis, which is a mosquito-borne illness where the state tends to run in 3-year cycles of spikes and then spikes of activity and then lessening of activity. And we had a tough year last year, tough year in 2019, and it's expected that this will be a difficult year as well. So the most important thing people can do to protect themselves from mosquito-borne illness, that also includes West Nile virus at this point in time, is to take personal precaution measures. And that's using insect repellent, wearing longer pants and longer sleeves. Go for linen, to keep yourself cool, but longer sleeves and longer pants, and to try to avoid outdoor activities between the times that mosquitoes are most active, and that's dusk until dawn. And I think that's everything that I have for right now. Are there any questions or concerns?
I'm all set.
Quick question. Is there I note that the 16 to 19-year-olds have a small percentage. Are we
Yep.
doing outreach because of those post-high school?
Some of them are post-high school and some of them are still in high school. So we did host a vaccination clinic at the high school back on May 26th. And next Wednesday, we will be having the second doses for those individuals who came. It was not a large number of high schoolers, I will say. We had, I think, about 5 to 8 who availed themselves of the opportunity. So I will be working on some messaging campaigns to make it enticing, to think about, you can do these things inside with your friends without your mask on. You're not putting the other people in your life, whether they're parents or grandparents or, other friends or friends who are immunocompromised, at risk. So we need to do some more outreach in that regard to encourage participation.
Thank you.
The last thing I will say is I am totally at your disposal for when you need to meet. But with things the way they are now, I would be happy to come as often as you want me to come. And I'm happy to stretch out the distance between the updates as you all see fit.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll get back to you. We're hoping to space out our meetings as well.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here every week for as long as I can
Sure.
remember. It's really
Yeah.
great. Thanks. Okay. There's nothing else for Mary Beth. We'll move on. So just a couple of things in the chair's report. The finance committee, appointing committee, which is myself, Jim Purdy, the finance committee chair, and Roger Smerge, the moderator, met to talk about the process that we're used going forward to choose the two, I guess, open positions for finance committee. We decided that meeting that we would extend the deadline just a few days to send in letters of interest for the finance committee. That's until 6/11, which I believe is this Friday. And I think next week we have a meeting that will be interviewing the candidates. I think interview may be too strong a word, but at least meeting with the candidates. I'm just trying to find the date. Maybe someone can help me with that. And then we'll, the finance committee will be all set. I would like to request that we are still, make a statement anyway, that we're still getting a few smattering of interest in other committees that also had a deadline of June 1st. And I would like to recommend that we extend the deadline for all of the boards and committees to this Friday on the 11th, since we are not quite ready to start making appointments. We have some policy work to do. So I think we probably would be okay. And we still have a few committees that we need to be recruiting for. So if it's okay with Gary and Diane, I'm going to suggest that we extend the deadline a few more days until the 11th of June.
That's fine by me, because as you said, there's still vacancies, so we're still looking for people to step up and fill those slots. So
yeah,
let's leave it open.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. And just as an update, and Tom mentioned this briefly, just so people know, we are still in negotiations for our incoming town administrator. This is not an unusual situation. It always takes a little longer than we think, but I just want people to understand that that's still an ongoing process. And as soon as we have final information and we're ready to announce it and make an appointment, we'll be doing that. That's all I have. Gary or Diane, do you have anything you'd like to discuss or announce? Or
Nothing here.
Diane?
Nothing here as well.
Okay, so we'll move on to the part of the meeting that's new-ish. The consent agenda is our next agenda item, and this is mostly deals with minutes, but with our new proposed process, Diane will ask you to please explain that and make the motion and call the vote and do the whole thing.
To the whole thing. My
The whole
goodness.
thing.
So I move to approve all the items and hold all executive session minutes in the consent agenda, including the open session minutes from May 11th, 2021, May 15th, 2021, TA interviews, May 19th, 2021, May 25th, 2021, May 27th, 2021, which was a joint with the Board of Health, as well as the executive session minutes from May 19th, 2021 and May 25th, 2021, which are all included in your packet. And I have read through and think they're ready for you to approve.
I guess we will need someone to second that motion.
I'll second the motion then.
Okay. And back to you, Diane, to call the vote.
Yes, so roll call vote. Catherine,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Diane, yes, as well.
Okay. So
Lot
the
of
next thing the next thing on our agenda, and again, I'll just announce it and then I'll turn it over to Tom. It's the beginning of appointment season. So the next item of new business is public safety annual appointments. And Tom, if you could introduce that, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay. Thank you. First, on our public safety annual appointments, we have both police and fire. And we'll read the police appointments, then fire appointments. And then I believe the board will make the draft, has draft motions for each. The first is for Police Chief Kevin DiNapoli and Deputy Chief Jason Lucatoni. Are we
So-
going to be doing each of these individually or as a group?
Well, they're all separate draft motions. So
Right.
it feels like, Gary, if you'd like to
Right, so
go ahead with this
I'll
one.
read each one then. I move
Okay.
to appoint Police Chief Kevin J. DiNapoli and Deputy Chief Jason Lucatoni for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. Do
I
hear a
second.
And I'll call the vote, the roll call vote. Again, as always, if there's a discussion or a question, now's the time. But if not, I will call the vote. So Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. So that's public safety. Thank you. We'll move on to, well, go
Next
ahead,
one
Tom.
is
I'll let
Sasha.
you go through.
Thank you. Next group are police sergeants, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these names going forward. Christopher Mashan, Michael Mizjik, and David Marsh.
so I move to appoint Police Sergeants Christopher J. Mason, Michael J. Mizik, and David T. Marsh for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
second.
Okay. Comments, questions? If not, we'll move to a vote. Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Okay, next, Tom?
Next are our full-time police officers, Chad Labrie, John Phillips, Bart Connors, Michelle Princey, and our newest appointment, Keegan O'Donnell.
all right. I move to appoint Police Patrolman Chad P. Labrie, John P. Phillips, Bart B. Connors, Michelle D. Princey, Keegan C. O'Donnell for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
second.
And unless there's discussion or questions, I'll call the vote. Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Okay, moving right along.
Next are our police reserve officers, Richard Sherry, Brian Pratt, Christopher Sanborn, Stephen Farinato, Scott Wood, Wesley Isidoro, David Ferry, Lawrence Nestor, John Freitas, Rainey Perez, Kevin Kelly, and Anthony Santo.
I move to appoint Police Reserve Officers Richard Sherry, Brian Pratt, Christopher Sanborn, Stephen Farinato, Scott Wood, Wesley Isidoro, David Ferry, Lawrence Nestor, John Freitas, Rainey Perez, Kevin Kelly, and Anthony Santo for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
second.
I'll call the vote. Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Thank you for that.
All right. And the last police officer appointment is a police liquor agent, and that's Deputy Chief Jason Lucatoni.
all right. I move to appoint Jason Lucatoni as liquor agent for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
second.
Okay, calling for a vote. Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes.
Okay, next we'll go to the fire department. And actually, one thing I'll recommend to Ryan when he becomes the TA here is every year alternate fire and police. So who goes first on the appointment list? So in this case, unfortunately, Fire Chief Kavanaugh goes next, he's second, but he's still first along with Chief DiNapoli and departments. Fire Chief Stephen Kavanaugh and Deputy Chief Jeffrey Baxter and Daniel Sullivan.
I move to appoint Fire Chief Stephen B. Kavanaugh and Deputy Chief Jeffrey W. Baxter and call Deputy Chief Daniel C. Sullivan for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second,
Okay, we'll call for a vote. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. So that's unanimous again.
Next is our Fire Captain, John Joyce.
I move to appoint firefighter and call Fire Captain John H. Joyce for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second,
Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. No, unanimous.
Okay, next we have our fire lieutenants. Michael Binns, Gary Blaney, Thomas Curran, Christopher Jones, and Sean McCarthy.
I move to appoint call fire lieutenants Michael T. Binns, Gary P. Blaney, Thomas D. Curran, Christopher J. Jones, and Sean P. McCarthy for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second,
And the vote, we'll start with Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. Unanimous for the firefighters.
Okay. Next we have our firefighters, our call firefighters. Richard Bertone, Denzel Berth, Jason Braley, Robert Gallinelli, Stephen Koutrakis, Anthony Nickus, Eric Poitras, Michael Reynolds, Michael Schroeder, Nicholas Bean, Christopher Swinich, Marissa Mead, Allison Boulouis, and John Ward and Matthew Bean.
All right. I move to appoint call firefighters Richard C. Bertone, Denzel B. Berth, Jason E. Braley, Robert Y. Gallinelli, Stephen M. Koutrakis, Anthony C. Nickus, Erica R. Poitras, Michael P. Reynolds, Michael D. Schroeder, Nicholas D. Bean, Christopher G. Swinich, Marissa K. Mead, Allison R. Boulouis, John P. Ward, Matthew D. Bean for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
I
Sorry
second.
for any mispronunciations there.
That was the toughest list, I think. Okay, if we're ready to vote, Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. So unanimous again.
Okay. Next, we
Moving
have
along.
Next, we have our call provisional firefighter. The appointment is for Cooper Kennedy.
I move to appoint call provisional firefighter Cooper L. Genodi for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second,
Okay, if there are no questions, Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. Getting there.
And our final fire appointment this evening is the oil burner inspector. That would be Deputy Chief Jeffrey Baxter.
I move to appoint Jeffrey W. Baxter as the oil burner inspector and fire prevention officer for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second,
Okay, we'll move to a vote. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. So that, we did it. That's it for appointments. Congratulations to all those folks. Hopefully no surprises there. The next thing on our agenda in new business is a use request for Pingree Park and the Hamilton Wenham Community Garden for a date in July. And Tom, if you can explain that to us, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion, I think.
Thank you. We have a request for a use for Wednesday, July 14th for a memorial event for Diane Denman. Diane was a lifetime resident of Hamilton, later in Wenham. She was an active member of the local garden club. Her son is organizing an event in her memory. It was requested to be at Pingree Park Garden on Wednesday, July 14th. Setup would be at 9 a.m. The time would be between 10 a.m. and noon. Breakdown around 12:30 in the afternoon for a group of approximately 100 people. Food, if permitted, would be a hands-free bagged lunch from Henry's or individual bottled waters, no catering personnel. Music would be low volume classical selection from a digital mix, and flowers coming from the Garden Club of Wenham. They are requesting permission to have the memorial service at the park at that date and time.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns or comments on this? We've not had, to my recollection and knowledge, for use of Pingree for this kind of thing.
No, I think the very beautiful new garden we have there, thanks to the garden club, that's be a great site for this. So I'm all in favor of yes.
Okay, Diane, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I think it's a really nice idea. It'd be nice for the family, I'm sure.
I agree. I do have just a couple of questions. The request mentions the Board of Health. I'm just going to make the assumption that the Board of Health will or has already approved everything that they need to allow this to go forward. I think it's a lovely idea. It's a lot of people, relatively speaking. So I just have a couple of questions. One of them would be, and these are, I think, questions that maybe need to eventually be posed to the requesting parties. We would request that the trash, I think, any trash that's generated, if there's food or any other items, that it be carried out of the park. So when it's completed, if folks would just make arrangements to remove the trash. And also, there's a question for if there's anyone from the police here. Oftentimes in groups that size, especially when they'll be maybe all going in and coming, or at least leaving at the same time, I don't know if there's any need or requirement for a police detail for something like that. And if we don't have an answer for that tonight, I'll just ask someone to please follow up on that before the event.
Catherine, the chief is still on. If you
Is he? I wish I could see everyone. I just put everyone's name on.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Chief Denably?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally depends on the amount of people and time of the day. A lot of different factors come into place relative to that, but we'd be more. And if it's a small, quick type scenario, we can use our on-duty personnel as well. If instead of having to do a detail, if it's a real quick, just letting people in and out of an area real quick, we would be more than happy to help with that as well.
Okay, so how should that work? Who should contact who to make sure that if that needs to happen, it happens?
Yep, they can go through me or the deputy, whomever is planning it, and
Okay.
we can go over the logistics of it. Be super easy.
Okay. So I guess then the request is for someone to get to whoever. I guess Heidi Porat, is she the actual person who requested this? Maybe
Yeah,
someone can
Catherine,
reach out. Yeah,
I've been
go ahead.
working with the family.
Yeah.
And they do know about carry in and carry out.
Yeah.
We did not submit it to the police for a traffic detail for a separate police detail because there's no liquor license approval involved. It's just the use of the space. So that's typically what's triggered the detail in the past, but I can certainly work with the chief about if someone on our patrol could be by there if that's a concern. And I would also say that the Board of Health provisions outlined are dated. This request was received prior to the governor lifting the COVID restrictions, thus the inclusion of the Board of Health question. Now with the governor's lifting of the restrictions, those are no longer anything that we're enforcing locally or at the state level. So those are now moot, at least. This is just, we continue, we still do the use requests for Pingree Park. That's the select board's jurisdiction. But in terms of COVID procedures, there's nothing we can really hold them to right now other than whatever the state standards are, which there aren't for this type of event.
Yeah, it's another one of those situations. This is a lovely thing, and I'm fully supportive. But I'm going to say that process or policy word again. I think that's such a lovely garden that we may continue to get more requests for the use of that space. So perhaps when we do our policy for use of public spaces, we can include that and say things like, specify a checklist of trash and police. Okay. questions or discussion on that? If not,
I'll make
we'll,
the motion then.
yes, please.
All right. I move to approve the use of Pingree Park for the Denman Memorial adjacent to the Hamilton Wenham Community Garden from 9 a.m.
Yeah.
to 12:30 p.m. on July 14th, 2021.
Second,
Okay, any last minute comments or discussion by anyone? If not, we'll move to a vote. And this is just the order that you are on my screen. So Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. So that's unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is under new business is discussion and vote to approve the memorandum of use, understanding rather, for the Cape Ann Veterans District. Tom, maybe you can give us a few words or tell us who can give us a few words.
Certainly. And actually, I want to thank our Veterans Committee for actually bringing this to our attention and working with us on it. This is actually an agreement that is actually a cost saving and a benefit for our veterans. It will be saving us between 10 and 15, maybe even more $1,000 annually by joining with the Cape Ann Regional Veterans Group and moving away from the Northern Essex. Technically, last year when the town of Hamilton moved in with Rockport, Manchester by the Sea, and the city of Gloucester to form the Cape Ann Regional Committee, it somewhat left Wenham as an island. Legally, by state law, if you are creating a regional veterans district, all the communities have to be contiguous. What happened, even though we were allowed to stay with Essex, we were not contiguous with the remaining communities. By the Cape Ann district, and particularly the city of Gloucester, taking us in, we are now contiguous with Rockport, Manchester by the Sea, and Hamilton and Gloucester. So what the board would be doing would be approving the MOU. The other communities have already approved us joining with them. And the final step would be for the select board to approve the MOU. We would sign it at your pleasure at town hall. And, or actually you'll be voting to authorize me. I'm sorry, I've got to remember these things. It's a little different when you're voting to authorize me to sign on your behalf to join this. So we will be effectively joining it July 1st. And I do think Gary was in on a great deal of the discussion when we were a single board at that time. So we went through this very diligently before we made this decision.
Questions or comments? Gary?
If I could just add one thing in there, I would note that the Veterans Committee meeting earlier this morning said farewell and a thank you, well-deserved thank you to Karen Tyler, our Essex District Coordinator. So
That was nice. Thank you for that. Diane? Oops, you're muted.
I know I had to mute because Walter was barking. I'm sorry. I was going to mention that about Karen. So I appreciate that they thanked her. That's wonderful. I would like to say that in this agreement, though, our address is incorrect.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Oh, I corrected that. This is not what you did not get the final agreement.
Okay.
I picked up on that also.
And then
They made
the
it
only,
final.
the last thing I would like to vote on this, being the town clerk in Manchester. Is there an issue with that? Or do I have to abstain? Not abstain, excuse myself.
I would probably just be on the safe side, abstain, because technically you're an employee
Okay,
of Manchester by the Sea.
yep.
So I just had a couple of comments. I'm sure I'm not allowed to mention typos, although I only saw that one, and that was the address. But I think there's once this is approved, there's a further action we'll have to take at some point, because it states in here that after the agreement is in effect, which is I guess in July, that there will be a district board comprised of several people, including the chairmen of the Board of Selectmen or the designees of the member towns. So we will have to appoint someone at some point to be on that committee. I don't feel like I'm the right person or have the right credentials. I think that I would nominate Gary, but we as a veteran, but I have no strong feeling about that. I just want us to remember that once those meetings start, we'll need to have, we should have a representative, but it doesn't have to be me. And yeah, and I think the only other thing I would add, and then we'd be ready for a motion, is that this motion probably should include that we authorize Tom to sign this agreement. That's what the other towns have done, and it'll save us a little time. So Gary, maybe you can include that in the motion.
So here comes the motion.
Okay,
Move to approve the memorandum of understanding to join the Cape Ann Veterans District as included in tonight's meeting packet dated June 2nd, 2021, and authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement on the behalf of the select board.
is there a second? Oh, we don't, I guess I'll second because Diane is going to abstain.
Right.
Vote, Gary,
Yes.
Catherine, yes, and
I've recused.
recused.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's really exciting. I look forward to, I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to meet, oh, now I've forgotten his name. The gentleman who is the VSO. I want to say Adam. Is that right?
Yes, Adam.
So I hope we'll have an opportunity to meet him at some point in time soon, but I'm excited to be able to join this group. Next, under new business, review and potential approval of non-union merit pay recommendation. So Tom, you want to speak to that or ask someone else to speak to it?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The town of Wenham has a program that authorizes merit increases at close to the end of the fiscal year by review. I've met with our department heads on them, and I've been very impressed with them in my seven-month stay. I've actually stayed on Broadway 3 months longer than I expected, but it gave me more time to work with the spine team. And I do appreciate all of them, and also the library included, because there are a separate issue regarding the merit increases for their non-union personnel. So the number that the board would need to approve, I mean, you're approving the merit raises as presented in FY21, would be without the library, it's $25,134.37. When you include the library, that's a grand total of $33,144.37. It is a number that was submitted in our budget, and we have it already funded, so no additional funding would be required.
Questions or comments on that?
No,
No.
I didn't.
Diane, comments,
No.
questions?
No.
Thank you very much, Tom, for overseeing that. I'm sure our employees, thank you. It's a tough year to come in sort of at the end and pull that together, and it's a bit of work. So thank you for doing that.
They did a
I
great
think-
job, fantastic job.
Great. Okay, ready for a motion.
Okay, I move to approve the non-union employee merit raises as presented for FY21 in the all-inclusive amount of $33,144.37.
Second.
Okay, if no further discussion, we'll go to a vote. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. Okay, the next thing under new business, letter F, is a presentation, I guess, and discussion on DPW water structure. And this is an update again from Tom. So if you could take us on that.
Thank you. This is in Jackie would like to jump in at any time, please do, but currently, as we look at personnel, our DPW director, Bill Tyak, will be retiring at the end of the year. And I know we have given a charge to a town government study committee to look into the impacts, the opportunities of continuing the operations of either a separate water department and separate board of water commissioners, and else including it as a merger of some sort with the Department of Public Works. In my own experience, I can't say this is the same for all 351 cities and towns across the community. In my career, water department had always been with the Public Works Department. I'm not here to pursue that or favor at this point, but I'm just passing that on for information. I know we were looking at the town government study committee to be looking at that. Unfortunately, with Bill's upcoming retirement, we have to understand what type of position that we're looking for. Are we looking for a DPW director who, whether she or he will be overseeing the water department as a part of including that within? Or are we just going to leave everything as it is in its current working arrangement? So Jackie and I been discussing this and asking would the board be interested in trying to expedite this because of Bill's upcoming retirement, to have set up a separate subcommittee to be looking at this over the summer and into the fall.
And if I may add on to Tom, two other items that make this a particularly timely topic, along with Bill Tyak's retirement. We also, coming soon in this fall, will be starting to negotiate all of our bargaining unit agreements. So all three are up this year, with the exception of library that was just negotiated this past year. So having some direction prior to those negotiations about the direction of those two departments, I think is really integral, because the majority of the employees of both of those departments are served by one of our collective bargaining units. We also have an opportunity where we've funded through town meeting the compensation and classification study that we're looking to do this summer ahead of those negotiations. And if we're going into this comp and class study with the acknowledgement that this is a specialty area that we're looking to do some research on, that's something we can get, third-party assistance from the folks that are going to do the compensation and classification study. For example, when they look at a job for compensation and classification, it's not just about the title and the pay, because it's hard to find apples to apples comparisons. They're also looking at the job description, the supervisory responsibilities, and the other responsibilities of a position. So incorporating that into our comp and class study, specifically looking at different towns and asking for the comps for not just the DPW director and the water position as we see it today, but any types of opportunities that come through the working group, would be an effective way of gathering that data as part of a larger project. We're already doing it. And that way, to Tom's point, we don't have an outcome. We don't have a plan for what this working group would make a recommendation to this board of, but it would allow the working group to work within that system. So whatever they do decide to recommend and the board does decide to do or not do, these positions would still be well suited to the recently done compensation and classification study. Because I think many of you have not always been on the board, but you've been around long enough to know that that was one of the biggest struggles of our Collins Center compensation study for the non-union employees, is that it only focused on the full-time non-union. We didn't address our part-time employees, and we didn't address any of our collective bargaining units. And so the goal of this study this summer is to do everything so everyone's on an equal playing field and we have accurate data for all these different cross sections. And so we have a bit of momentum where, as part of that, we can look at this topic as well, while still incorporating community input, as Tom and I mentioned in the memo, of the current chair of the Water Commission, who is the only appointee to the subcommittee from the Town Government Study Committee, Someone from the finance committee, I think they get to know our departments very well and could be a really good insight provider on that. And then hopefully someone from the community would be interested to step forward that has an HR background, because as all of you know, this, whatever we would do moving forward, even if it's maintain the status quo, having that HR background, it's very difficult for municipal position recruitment right now. So having that HR background, we think would be an added bonus to look at these transitions.
Discussion? Gary?
Well, yeah, so going back a little bit, so back in January, we did appoint Ernest Ashley to be a team leader or captain for this portion of the town government study group, but we did not recruit or couldn't recruit other members to the team. So I think given the timeline here, our options are either to soonest recruit 2 or 3 others, human resources or construction DPW background to assist on that town study government, or for have the staff, the water commission and the select board collectively deal with this issue directly.
Okay. Diane, thoughts?
I just got lost in what Gary said. Either try to get more people on this committee or use the select board and,
Well, what I would propose is, yeah,
Okay.
either energize up the second team on the town study government committee,
Mhm.
which we've already appointed Ernest Ashley, or given the timeline here, that perhaps we just need to have staff, water commission and select board engaged to make the decision. And perhaps call in other volunteer help if we need to be.
someone perhaps with HR, as
Yeah.
Jackie had mentioned, that's a good
With our
idea too.
organizational experience.
No,
Gary,
I think
can I
that's,
may I just ask one note? So we had used the word working group when Tom and I submitted our memo versus a subcommittee of this board, because a subcommittee does have to work in public and post their meetings, whereas a working group that is not going to have a, it's not publicly appointed. They're not a publicly appointed body. They do not have to have a quorum met, and they don't have to have minutes and be a publicly posted meeting. So we had suggested a working group that would come back with a recommendation to the select board versus a subcommittee, if we're talking about that version versus reinstituting town government study. So I don't have a preference. I just want to make sure that whatever you want to do, we make that definition is there's a difference, if that makes sense.
So I think I think it's a hybrid approach, in my opinion. I think that given the time frame and the expertise that we may need, I think a working group in this case can work with maybe some scheduled, updates along the way to this board. But I think to include some staff, certainly to include this person who was already appointed, who is Ernest Ashley, a couple of community members, I think. So some combination of staff and community members as a working group to work through the options that we might have and and ultimately make a recommendation. If we go with that option, I would just make 2 suggestions, I guess. And the first is that since this will be, I guess, basically staff driven, as it possibly should, that we really, whoever writes this, there should be a charge. I think there should be something that says, okay, this is what this working group is going to be doing. This is the time frame we expect, and this is the deliverable, which may just be, a recommendation. But I think we need to, I'm not saying the select board would or should vote on it, but I think it should be written and we should at least see it before we, formally agree. And in a working group, I think it's reasonable for someone to identify the titles of some key people, so that it's not, those would not actually be our appointments. There would be choices of the working group. If that's, but it would be useful to the board, I think, if we're going to go that route, to understand what kinds of people would be requested to be. The only other comment that I would make is, this is a a structural change that's can be a little complicated, and I would highly recommend, and in addition to certainly the work that's being done with the wage and classification study, that we seek some kind of, whatever we can afford or however way we can get it, some outside counsel on someone, not counsel as in legal counsel, but advice from someone who's had experience with this kind of a organization or reorganization, who understands it, that could perhaps help this group come up with some options. Someone who's actually done this kind of a transition before. So those are my only comments. And I guess I'd say tonight we should probably, we don't have any action, but it probably would be useful to the staff and others for us to have a consensus around whether we're okay with a working group or we would like to have a select board appointed subcommittee. So preferences, Diane? Did you say something?
No, I was waiting. I was waiting
Okay.
for Gary because that's
I'm sorry.
where we're going.
See, I
That's
think
okay.
this is, we got ourselves in such a good rut now.
I know.
shouldn't change it. Sorry. All right, Gary.
Well, I think a working group will do the job, but we also need to get the Water Commission buy-in on this as well. So perhaps we need to have Tom as the town administrator initiate this working group or organize it. And I'm not sure when the next meeting of the Water Commission is, but perhaps we need to have select board representative at that meeting to invite them into this process.
That sounds good. And I do agree. A working group would probably work very well for this situation.
Okay. And maybe by the time of that first meeting, even with the Water Commission, we can have a charge, some kind of a charge written, nothing elaborate, but just, it would be good to have an idea of exactly what that group's going to be doing and the time frame.
We can draft up a draft charge for the board.
And if I may, the Water Commission are meeting the Water Commission is meeting Tuesday next week. So I can speak with the superintendent about whoever of you wants to proceed to liaise. I can let him know to expect you.
Okay. We'll figure that out offline. Somebody can be there. Okay. So we'll maybe at our next meeting or the meeting after, we can approve a charge and get started on this. It is really important and really timely. The time is going to fly by. So good thinking on that. Anything else on that? If not, we'll move to public health grant intermunicipal agreement for the for Hamilton, Essex, Manchester, and Manchester by the Sea public health.
Thank you.
Tom. Yes.
What we have this evening is that since KP Law represents all the communities, Hamilton, Wenham, Manchester by the Sea, and Essex, regarding this intermunicipal agreement, which we will have them be reviewing, each board, each of the boards of the 4 communities need to approve the professional conduct disclosure statement that would allow joint representation of KP Law for each community during this agreement. Hamilton, Essex, Manchester by the Sea will be also doing this with their boards for their vote. This is not to sign the agreement. This is just the process to allow them to review a draft agreement before it comes back before the board.
Probably necessary, since they would have a potential conflict of interest, since KP Law represents all of those towns.
Correct.
Right? But I'm thinking that we've done this before, and I'm certain, since they represent so many towns, that other towns before us and after us will do this. Any discussion on this particular item? Just the
Good here.
Diane?
Do I need to recuse myself again? Become more of a
Unfortunately,
problem.
Diane, yes, but we will
I know.
mention you present.
Okay.
Okay,
Love it.
Sorry.
so I guess we're ready for a motion then,
Right.
please.
I move to approve the professional conduct disclosure for joint representation by town council for the regional public health intermunicipal agreement.
And I'll second that motion. And we can vote. Gary,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Diane is recusing herself.
Yes, and Gary and Catherine, we do have the paperwork for you to sign for the determination. So at your pleasure, when you're in, we'll make sure it's left out on the desk.
noted.
Okay, got it. Um,
Oh, yeah.
So the IMA itself, we don't need to take any action tonight?
No,
That
not
one.
at this time. No.
Okay, so we've finished with that topic.
Right.
And we can move to old business. We have doing a lot of collaboration these days. So letter H under old business is potential approval of the North Shore Regional IT Collaborative Memorandum of Understanding. Tom,
Yeah,
or Jackie, someone to
yes. we
introduce
had-
that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, all
Who's
set.
ready? Okay. We had discussed this at our last meeting. The lead municipality is Danvers. The participating other towns are Topsfield, Hamilton, Wenham, Manchester by the Sea, Middleton, and in the middle of FY22, Essex. What the total FY22 costs are for our community is, not our community, for all communities, is $24,000 with a base assessment of slightly over 4,000. The good news is last Friday, we had a small meeting with the Lieutenant Governor for an announcement that the 6 communities, sorry, 7 actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, yeah, I'm sorry, 7 communities. We received the Community Compact Cabinet Efficiency and Regionalization Grant in the amount of
Nice.
$100,000, which with Danvers being the lead community. So that will help go forth for any additional programming work that we want to do amongst the 7 communities. So that came as a bit of a surprise late last week. So thank you. And this is a good thing for regionalization. This is excellent. What the basic expenses are would be the Danvers IT staff hours, and what the initial benefits are going to be is membership in the Regional IT Collaborative, access to the Danvers IT Director and staff in an advisory capacity, access to the Danvers Regional Data Center, review of all capital IT projects for all the communities, management of the regional support vendor, management of regional IT standards, improvements in our infrastructure service based on fiber optics, network testing, management, data center upkeep, maintenance, and having staff access to Danvers for their IT staff and their services, project support, procurement assistance, which is of great assistance to a community like Wenham that does not have on-site IT support. And this was a wonderful program working with the communities. So I would be very appreciative that the board approves the collaborative MOU and authorize myself to sign it on the board's behalf.
Discussion? Gary, 'cause I was supposed to start with you, I guess.
Right. Well, we had this full review on this the previous meeting, so I think we're ready to go ahead.
You have anything to add, Diane?
I think so. I agree with Gary, and I think I have to recuse myself again.
Oh.
Who would have
Wow,
thought?
okay, I know.
One
right.
person I would like to thank who is not here tonight, but who did a ton of work on this was our team member, Nicole. Nikki worked a great deal on this project, and that was the first things I saw when I came in here was that her and Jackie were working yeoman hours on this. And I really want to thank both of them. I mean, this is a lot of great things I can put in my resume that I can take credit for, but it was all these other people behind the scenes who were really doing the work. And I want to thank them all, because this is what regionalization is all about. And I think we're leaving Ryan with a good team. But I want to thank Nikki especially, because she did a great deal of work in this project.
Thank you.
Um, I have no questions, just a funny sort of anecdote here. When this administration, governor and lieutenant governor came on, the community compact program followed shortly thereafter. Is it 6 years ago? 7 maybe? And at the time, the town administrator was very excited and I must have been chair, came up to me and said, "Oh, there's this great new program, Community Compact." And after he spent 15 minutes telling me what in the world a Community Compact was, I frankly thought, we will never, as with so many other grants, we will never see a penny from this. And so it's very exciting to actually get yet another Community Compact grant. Is it our fourth? Jackie? Sixth. So, and it's, significant money for all of us. So that's really great. And I have no other questions, but also thank you to Nikki. And I know, Jackie, you've done a ton of work to pull this together, and the foresight to see that we needed it a couple of years ago and knowing it would take some time for it to be pulled together. So I am all ready for a motion.
All right, I move to approve the North Shore Regional IT Collaborative Memorandum of Understanding effective July 1st, 2021, as presented in the packet, and authorize the interim town administrator to sign on the board's behalf.
I will second that motion. And no further discussion. Gary?
Yes.
Catherine, yes, and Diane will recuse herself. Okay, I have been informed that we're not ready yet to discuss the CPA agreements as it says here, so we will defer those, the motions on those to the next meeting and move on to letter J. We had community member request an update of the Main Street Signal Project. I think timing wise, because there's been such an increase in traffic in the past few weeks. So Tom, I think you have an update for us, a brief update on that.
Certainly. I received an update from the District 4 project manager. District 4 is the Mass Department of Transportation, and they're out of Arlington on this. And what they are waiting for at this point is they filed a waiver because if you have a roadway that has a volume of over 10,000 vehicles per day, which Route 1A they determined has 16,000 vehicles per day in our area, is required to have a bike lane with a 3-foot buffer from traffic on either side. And what they have done is that they have filed for a waiver with their design review committee of the buffered bike lane requirement. And that is going to take a number of weeks for them to hear on that. Once they have a definitive result on that, they'll be notifying us. And if they get the waiver, they'll be able to move forward with the design public hearing later this summer. And so we will be keeping the public aware of these steps. But at this point, the assumption is there will be a public hearing later this summer regarding it once they get the determination on the waiver of the buffered bike lanes on Route 1A.
Questions for Tom on that? It sounds like pretty much the original schedule with a few delays, COVID related, just time wise. Very long, drawn out process, as we know, but sounds like it is at least moving along.
Yeah, but as we've all seen, and I've seen since I've been here, there is a high amount of traffic on 1A, and the volume of 16,000 vehicles a day is actually numbing to think of that high volume.
Yeah, especially like the select board that all have to make a left onto 1A to get to town
And the
hall.
interim town administrator also.
Right. And so many other people. There's those intersections are really problematic for most of the residents. So, all right, well, we look forward to further updates on that as they become available.
Quick question, Catherine.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Is there an opportunity for the town to weigh in on that waiver, Tom?
I can find out regarding the waiver. I can respond to him tomorrow and see if there's an opportunity for the town to weigh in on that also.
I have a quick question also. Why are we asking for the waiver?
The waiver is because of the amount of width that you have to have between the bike lane and basically pedestrian traffic, so that there is enough width there.
So we don't have enough to do that. Is that why they need the waiver?
Yeah, it's tight.
Okay.
Anything else on that? I think well, anyway, I don't know what I think. I think I look forward to hearing more as they move forward at the state's pace, which is slow. So then the next, is that all on that? I'm sorry. Okay. The next item I'll introduce, I think, it's our continued conversation and moving forward with policies. So we've had a couple of, meetings where we've prioritized and talked about these, and in some conversations in town hall, it's become apparent that there's a little bit of summer staff with internships and a little bit of, I hesitate to say this, but perhaps a little bit of summer or short-term capability or bandwidth. And I think perhaps, if it's okay with the select board, we should provide the staff the boundaries or the parameters that we would like to see with a process or with these policies, and then let them take a stab at writing a policy and bringing us a first draft. I'd also like to recommend, and we've talked about this a lot tonight, that we just flip these two a little, addressing them one at a time, and starting with a policy about appointments and the process for appointments. Does that sound like a reasonable idea that we start with that? Diane? Yes, maybe. Gary?
Yes, appointments. We're into that season, so we need to decide.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fine with me. So are you saying, just to make sure I understand, that staff in town hall is interested in starting it, coming up with a draft and bringing it to us, so then we can work with that?
Right. At least, I don't know how it will progress. Some of these are more complicated, but on the appointments process, we have a policy, a fairly recent policy that needs updating and needs fleshing out a few areas that need to be fleshed out. And so I think that one, if staff could look at that and see what we have. And if we could identify what we think needs to be fleshed out, that they could come to us with a draft. I'm actually going to request, if we can do this, that we have a first draft, again, it's mostly written, for next week, so that we can really get moving with the appointments. And from my point of view, having been, I guess, fairly closely involved with the first one, and now see some of its weaknesses, what we didn't have in our appointment policy, or what we don't have in our appointment policy really at all, is a process for choosing the people that we would like to appoint, mostly if there are more candidates than there are positions. So we really don't have a well-designed, fair, clear, transparent way to make sure that we address the fact and acknowledge the fact of the number of candidates we have and choose who they are. So my suggestion relative to the policy, the existing policy, is that that's an area that I think is weak, and I would love to see be fleshed out a little bit more in a first draft. I don't know. Gary's worked with this policy once, and Diane, I know you've certainly worked on both ends of it. So I don't know if you have other things that are not in our present policy that you might think of. And I guess in the next couple of days, if you can contact Tom or Jackie with anything like that.
Sure.
Will do. All right.
Okay. I think we probably, once we get that one done, it'll be easier to talk about the others relative to the code of conduct. I think we have at least 3 or 4 examples of towns that have some form of a code of conduct. I think, Tom, you have a couple and I have one. So maybe as a preface, we can send those out to the rest of the board so that we can start looking at what codes of conduct look like and try to, frame that one up a little bit more. But I think you have a couple, right, Tom?
Is Tom frozen? Yes, I think if I can inject, Catherine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I've looked at several towns around, and I know both of us attended that webinar back
Yes.
in early May. And
Yep.
from what I've seen that I'm not sure who copied who, but it would appear that the Maya MCA document presented in that webinar seems to be the standard for the towns. And I think that some of them have taken portions, some have taken the great majority out there, but I think that's probably the standard, if there is one out there, to start work from.
Right. I agree. I've also been sent, and this is not as much a code of conduct as a code of public discourse from the Human Rights, the Wenham Human Rights Committee, which probably would be good to circulate. It's sort of part of the bigger code of conduct. The tricky thing about the code of conduct is to make it concise enough that it's digestible. But if we can maybe get the ones that we all have floating around, all have them, then we can take a look at and see how we'd like to frame that. Okay. Wow. If there's nothing else on that, we'll look for hopefully a first draft of the appointment next week. And if you have any particular comments that you'd like to see added to that, that would be great. Let someone know in town hall in the next couple of days. So we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, I think, and it's other matters. And I will just, we talked about this briefly earlier. It looks like we will be meeting on June 15th, which is next week. And since Diane is not available on the 22nd and we've got some important stuff to do, we'll meet again on the 29th. So the 15th and the 29th of June. And then the way it looks right now, the pencil in the date, our first meeting in July would be on July 13th. We have that July 4th weekend and things. So June 15th and the 29th, and most likely the next one will be July 13th. Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss? Oh yeah, Gary.
So
yes, Gary.
We extended the deadline for submissions to the boards until the 11th this Friday. Do we anticipate starting working through that list on the 15th, or should people expect the 29th?
Well, I think we talked about on the 15th, we have a fair number of sort of in-house, still statutory kind of appointments, treasurer, collector, parking clerk. So I think that we're going to stick to the ones, perhaps, I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is probably a good time. I don't think it's on the agenda. There are some quorum issues, and there has not been a select board candidate or member on the Affordable Housing Trust. Well, for a while, certainly at least since January. I know that there was a letter sent out if anyone was interested, but if no one has a problem, that's a little out of sequence, because we won't be necessarily ready to appoint the community members of the Affordable Housing Trust, but perhaps next week on the appointments, we could include the select board representative for the Affordable Housing Trust. But they're more housekeeping ones that we think we can do next week. And if we're lucky and we can pull it off, we can approve the policy. And then at our following meeting on the 29th, we can begin, we'll begin appointing to the boards and committees. But again, part of the policy is to decide how we want to vet these folks. And it's been, a few things have been discussed in the past. We've at one point in time talked about interviewing, we've talked about casual conversations, but until we know what we're doing with that, I think we can't really do too much appointing. And we still have a few names coming in. So next week, I think we'll have enough to do with the other things and the housekeeping ones. Set. Anything else? We won't get them done. I don't mean to sound not optimistic, and we rarely get our appointments done by the end of June or the beginning of the next fiscal year. So it's not unusual, but considering everything that's happened this year, I think it's reasonable to expect that we should have the appointments certainly done by that July meeting. Will be all completed, and we'll be a couple of weeks late, but not too bad. So, okay. I've forgotten on our new process, which thank you very much, everyone, to the board for trying this out. We'll try it out one more time and decide if we think it works. But thank you for your cooperation with that. And yeah, that's
Motion.
you, Diane.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. Well, take a vote on that. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. All right, we're adjourned at 8:00.